Nice job. Come on, man.
I'm so ready.
I don't know what to say. I'm speechless.
It's
speechless,
actually
guys.
great. It's
That's a
fantastic
first.
how bad you are with that music timing.
All right, take
Before
two.
every
So for the
episode.
first time in Fantasy Fools football podcast history, we did a retake.
We did a retake.
It was just a bad start. It was just bad. I mean, oh my!
But here we are.
We made
Before
it.
every episode starts, Tyler goes, "Oh shit, the music!" Every episode. You guys don't hear it, but it happens.
Even on episode run 2. Like, come on, man. All right,
Anyway, well, welcome in, fools, to episode 22 of the Fantasy Fools podcast. Today we are going to talk about some news going on around the NFL. I know it's still that offseason, so we're following the same format. We're also going to talk about our divisional breakdown, the NFC North.
Woo!
And I think we're all, I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but like I'm feeling pretty football ready. I mean, this is the time where I'm starting to get excited, not because we're close, but just because I miss it.
Oh, I miss
definitely
it.
miss it too. 100%. And guess what? All of a sudden I'm starting to go and I'm starting to hear some more people talk about chatter about, oh, when are we getting these drafts going? July 1 is coming around the corner. And I know one of my leagues, we're doing a slow draft and we're starting on July 1. I'm so excited.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah,
What's so intense?
I'm
way
excited.
too early to draft.
No, it's a slow draft.
Yeah, like a 24-hour draft for Dynasty.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly it. So basically what I'm going to do is like literally you have 24 hours to make a pick and it's only rookies. So like we're only doing 3 rounds and you can go for the month of July.
Yep.
That's cool.
Well, anyway, we are all excited for fantasy to come up. That's when this information is really going to hit home for all of you listeners or listener. But we can't wait. It's getting close. You can almost taste it, and it's a couple more months away. I think we're about at the halfway point before kickoff. So, days are counting down. Mike, why don't you catch us up with some NFL news around the league?
Will do, Tyler. Thanks for the transition. So basically here we go. From last
You're
week,
welcome.
we don't have much news, but here is some. We got one more big contract, right? This one kind of came as a shock, in my opinion, but at the same time, super excited. And honestly, it's going to change my rankings of this player. Ramondre Stevenson for the Patriots got a 4-year deal, $36 million. It's not Christian McCaffrey money, but it's not nothing either for a running back nowadays. So, I mean, hey, that's showing some good commitment for Ramondre Stevenson. Michael Penix Jr. signed his entry-level contract. Another quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. Like, I mean, guys, were you guys surprised at that one?
Michael Penix Jr.? No.
The draft pick or the contract signing?
No, I'm talking about the contract signing. I thought they would, because they have a couple years to let him groom, don't they? Or am I just thinking too much into hockey?
No, they have to sign his rookie contract before he
They have to
plays.
sign. Okay, I guess I'm thinking more the rights are around for a little bit longer than that. But okay, maybe I'm just wrong. But I was
think
just
before the
genuinely
season
surprised.
starts, they have to sign at least a 4-year deal.
Okay, understood. All right, so maybe I'm just wrong in there. But another signee who signed, Lad McConkey. Hearing a lot of good things out of the Chargers.
He's a lad.
Yeah, he's quite the lad.
Yeah, he's going to be interesting. The whole wide receiver situation there is interesting.
The whole wide receiver there is interesting because it might just be him. He's got him and
Yeah.
Johnston. That's it. So
We'll see.
those two rookies just drafted, signing their rookie deals. Good for them. Brandon Ayuk and the San Francisco 49ers, they are not having proper contract talks. Apparently it's been a little sour, so might a trade be coming? Keep us
Everyone's wondering if it's potentially with the Commanders.
that would be wild, but I have heard that one.
Well, him and Jaden Daniels went to Arizona State together, so there's a connection there, and they've been buddies, and there's videos of them talking and FaceTiming, so everyone's making rumors and theories about it.
Got it.
Yep. And Antonio Brown. You guys remember that guy who was just absolutely dominant in fantasy for years? Well, he filed for bankruptcy. So good luck to Antonio. Hopefully he's not still crazy.
He's a little crazy.
Last but not least, Hard Knocks. The Hard Knocks trailer has officially debuted. Jordan, I believe you added this one. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting. It's Hard Knocks, I believe, off-season they're calling it. It's of the Giants, goes before free agency and draft to seeing where they are after post-draft. And we're going to see things like the Brian Burns trade. We're going to see them talk about Saquon Barkley leaving the team. Like in the trailer, the interesting part is that we see Joe Shane is supposedly on the phone with Saquon and says, all right, Saquon, can I get your word on that? Or are you just not even going to give us a chance?
You also get to watch Daniel Jones do absolutely nothing. Daniel, he's useless.
I mean, we get to see a little bit about his rehab, but I'm more interested to see how Joe Shane and Brian Daboll operate during a draft and during the offseason. I know Brian Daboll admitted he learned important things I only wanted Joe to hear. I put my phone next to the camera's mic with some music playing so they couldn't hear us. And I was like, that's genius.
That's awesome.
That's my head coach.
Well, that is some NFL news around the league. Now we want to get into and dive into our divisional breakdown of the week, and that is the NFC North. As you guys all know, I'm not wearing it today, but I'm a big Lions fan, so excited to talk about this division. And I'm interested to see. This is a pretty tough division, I think. Actually, I don't know what you guys think. This might be one of the hardest divisions right now in the NFL.
I do think it's actually top. It's one of the top 2 or 3, but like there's only 8 divisions, 4 teams per. But this is definitely one of the best ones, and I'm actually very excited about this episode.
It's interesting. It's definitely one of the more competitive ones. We're looking at 2 almost like bank on it playoff teams at least out of this division.
Yeah. Now, before we get started and talk about the teams, I want to ask you guys, like, real quick, fire them off. Where do you place this division in at the end of the season, first to last?
Oh man, that's such a good question that I was thinking about before this podcast recording, and like I actually don't know. I gotta say, if I have to go real quick, fire it off. I would say Detroit wins. Chicago's last, although that one's such a wild card to me. It's such a wild card, but I have to put them last. And I'd say Packers over the Vikings. So I'm going Detroit, Packers, Vikings, Chicago.
I'm going Detroit, Packers, Bears, Vikings.
I am going to go with what Jordan said and say Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings. I don't think I trust JJ McCarthy enough, but we'll get there. Starting us off, we're going to talk about the Detroit Lions. Go Lions! Big name staying. You still have Coach Dan Campbell staying, and we've talked about this a little bit. He's one of my favorite coaches in the game. Just his energy and passion is awesome, and super excited for the Lions in Detroit. He's still there. Jared Goff obviously remains, and he got signed with a big fat check that we talked about a couple of episodes. It was last episode of the episode before, but he got a big fat check. Amon-Ra St. Brown staying, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. I don't think I was surprised, but they did get rid of Jamal Williams last year. I was thinking maybe they might do it this year, but I think Montgomery played too well to let go.
I agree.
They couldn't let him go either because Jamal Williams went with the year before. I believe he only had a 1 or 2 year contract, so like he wasn't committed. Like they actually went out and signed Montgomery for a 3-year deal.
Yeah. You also got Sam Laporta and Jameson Williams staying on. And, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't see anyone leaving the Lions. I'm excited to see what this team does this coming season. We saw them in the beginning of last season, starting off with the win against the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions, first week last season. So I think we all have high expectations. But again, I know a couple Detroit and Michiganders who I know straight out of Michigan, and they've all said and given me advice of when you think the Lions are going to do good, don't expect anything. Keep your expectations low when it comes to the Lions.
Oof.
But Mike, who are you targeting? Who are you targeting fantasy wise this season? I think we all know the big names, but I think there's a lot we could talk about.
There's a ton we could talk about with this team, and like I said, I was very excited about this entire episode, and the Lions are a big part of it. my big guy on this team. I mean, you guys all know how much I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's just such a great talent. I think he's so fast, so electric, so explosive. I think you're going to see him put up major points. So he's my go-to fantasy target on here. But, I mean, the other guys you get, like, early in the draft, you're going to have to pick up Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're going to have to pick up. Well, if you're going to want him, if you're going to have to pick up Laporta. But I got to be honest, Sam Laporta is my avoid candidate here.
Why are you going to avoid him? He was number 1 in fantasy last season.
100%. I agree. He's number 1, and I think he's a great talent. But you know what? You're going to have to get him in the second round. And I think the tight end room, like we keep talking about on this podcast, it's just so tight now, and there's so many good tight ends. You're going to be giving up so much value in another wide receiver or running back, and you could just pick up Mark Andrews in the 4th or 5th round, and it'll be just as close to it, just as good.
I agree. I do think that Laporta, if he drops to the 3rd or 4th round somehow, it's definitely worth consideration. That's where he should go. But I think people are going to look at him and be like, oh, he's the next Travis Kelce. He's the next guy that's going to be treated as a wide receiver. And everyone's going to want that in fantasy. Who's the next Gronk? Who's the next Kelce? And I don't know if he'll live up to his draft pick value.
Yeah, you know what? At first I was like, you guys are wrong. But thinking about it now, I think you're right, because if you don't get Laporta, he's going to be a 2nd round pick. Then you get Kelce. Kelce's going to be a 2nd or a 3rd. But then the ball keeps rolling with that tight end position. Then you got T.J. Hawkinson, George Kittle. You've got
Mark Andrews.
You
got Njoku. You got all these other guys. Ferguson.
I would say the top 6 are probably the elite status, and then once you get to Njoku and anything below him, I think those are more. You're happy with what you got, but that's the tight end position. We've talked a lot about it. It's really, really the line between the first tight end and the 12th tight end is really not too few and far between.
Well, that's the thing. It's like if you're gonna pick Sam Laporta in the 2nd round, like Travis Kelce has had years where the difference between the 1st tight end and the 5th tight end is extreme.
Huge. Yep.
And you have to expect, if you draft him in the 2nd round at the tight end position, you have to expect that kind of value. And I don't think I do. I don't think Mike does.
I agree. And what you're talking about is, I mean, Jordan, I'm going to take it a step further with what you said. I mean, you're 100% right, but those years with Travis Kelce being the number 1 guy, he was the number 1 guy, and there was 3 steps between him and number 2.
Right.
Now, that's why he was drafted in the 1st round as a onesie position.
You're right.
So, you don't have that anymore. So the value is just not there. And the tight end, honestly, the entire tight end position deserves to fall in the rankings.
Yep, I agree.
I think Jameis, and the other thing I want to note about this team, big names staying. One name we didn't really mention is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. And so the last time there's been a top 5 NFL team that kept their coordinators, it hasn't really happened in the past 10 years besides the Detroit Lions. Ben Johnson was the most sought-after head coach candidate this offseason, and he chose to stay. So I think that says a lot about the consistency potential of what we saw this season and what we will see next season.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what are you guys doing with guys like, and I know we haven't really seen a breakout yet, but like Jameson Williams, who there's a lot of buzz and chatter around. Even a guy like Jared Goff, where do you put them in your draft rankings, and where do you put them in your player in your position rankings as well?
So I'd say right off the bat, I mean, Jameson Williams is somebody who I'm looking at in the later round picks. I mean, you're not going to be taking him in a top, probably even 5. You're not going to be taking him in your probably 6th or 7th round. But as a guy who might be able to be something and you can actually get value out of him in the 8th, 9th round, I could see that possibly happening. He's going to be the number 2 guy this year. I mean, he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver. He will not be the number 2 guy because the number 2 guy will be Sam Laporta.
Right.
But I mean, if you can get him as the 3rd option, and if one of those 2 goes down, you're going to be expecting a lot out of him. And he has the speed to do something. If he puts it all together, he's got a toolkit that can break fantasy.
I think that Jamison Williams is a high sleeper candidate, because if you look at the dynamic of that offense right now, just like Mike said, he can slide easily into wide receiver 2 position. And I almost feel like we could potentially see a Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown situation here with the Lions offense. And what I mean by that is Devonta Smith in the past couple years has been that player that you can get to be your wide receiver 2 or 3 in later rounds and still get very high value out of him, because A.J. Brown commands all the attention. So in this draft, is Monroe St. Brown going to command all the attention and Jamison Williams is going to go under the radar? And like Mike said, maybe rounds 9 or 10, he's a good sleeper. I also think that maybe Jared Goff could be a sleeper somewhat, because we could go ahead and get him in the later rounds and really fortify your running backs and wide receivers.
Sorry, Tyler, you take it.
I was going to say, and one of the things, Jordan, I think you brought up, and I'm interested to see, is Jared Goff. He ended up 7th in depending on your fantasy league, he ended up 7th out of the quarterbacks. And honestly, after a year with the team, I almost say that I might expect him to be 7 again, or if not at 7, at least I would say higher, top 5. He's got another season under his belt with this team, the same team. I'm hoping it only goes up from here.
I like where you bring that, because I was going to say the same thing. He did finish number 7 last year, but do you really think it's going to happen? And are you willing to draft him like he's the number 7 quarterback? Because you got to think, Jared Goff, number 7 quarterback, that's going to be on the fringe of the fifth round, 6th round.
You think so?
Are you willing to take the number 7 quarterback at that draft value when you're going to be looking to try and get your running back 2, running back 3?
I think I am. Last season especially, he was a really consistent quarterback. And it depends on your draft style, but I try to sometimes go for consistency, and then I pivot because I don't make very good draft choices. But overall, I think he's got a pretty good consistency about him, and I wouldn't mind picking him in the 7th, 8th round if other quarterbacks go like Hurts and Prescott and Lamar and even a guy like Brock Purdy or Jordan Love. It'd be hard to say, do I want Goff or Purdy or Goff or Love, because I think they're all about the same.
I agree with that, Tyler. That's a good comparison. I do think that potentially Goff's floor seems to be a little higher than Purdy's. Round 7 or 8, I look at it as by that, I've had 6, maybe 7 picks. I have at least my top 2 running backs, my top 2 wide receivers, maybe 3 at each, maybe even my starting tight end. At that point, yes, I'm comfortable taking Jared Goff if I'm confident in those other positions. I feel like Jared Goff might not be the reason you win your league, but he will not be the reason you lose. As in, his ceiling, maybe he's not going to blow up and win you weeks, but he's never going to I feel like his floor is very high.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and even just looking at the past 2 years, 2022 with the Lions, and that season they had. Oh no, that was the first. Never mind. 2022 season, yeah, they started out really poorly, and he still ended up the 10th quarterback. And then last year, obviously 7th. If we watch the trends, I think we can go up, but I know there's a lot of competition. But I'm very interested to see what Jared Goff's going to do, because I think he could be a good pick to get in your roster. I don't know if he's going to go early or late, but he could be someone to look at. Jordan, take us into the Chicago Bears breakdown.
Yeah, absolutely. Chicago Bears. So big name staying, obviously. There's been a lot of changes in Chicago, maybe the most changed team from last year. But the big name staying is DJ Moore, who is awesome. Really performed with Justin Fields. Who's the big name leaving? Now, the key additions here is DeAndre Swift at the running back position. Basically the whole offense. Caleb Williams will be the new quarterback. Rome Odunze is new wide receiver. And Keenan Allen, new wide receiver. In terms of who you want to target, is I feel personally one of the more difficult teams to read. We just went over a very easy team to read, and now we're going to talk about a difficult team. Tyler, who do you feel in this team is a target and maybe a sleeper?
So I think I'm taking this team with a grain of salt. I think there's a lot riding on how Caleb Williams is going to perform. And if I know Mike and I are on the Caleb Williams
hate train?
fan train. Yeah, the hate train.
The not fan train? Really?
It was the best I could come up with at the time.
What about,
I'm under a lot of pressure.
We're not talking about the boys here, not
For
the
our
A
fan.
train, but the B train.
Our fan demands great episodes.
Great content. And this is key. There's so much riding on him. Even DeAndre Swift, I feel like his performance is riding on Caleb Williams because DeAndre Swift, as you know, he's a huge pass catching back. He is a threat in the passing game. And if Caleb Williams isn't performing, honestly, Jordan, to answer your question, just took a huge circle and finally hitting home.
That's okay.
If it comes between certain players on this team and players who I think might be the same, I'm going with the other team because I think there's still such a huge question mark.
Yeah, it's tough. Mike, what do you feel about the Bears?
I mean, I think this is not to repeat what Tyler said, but I think this is going to be one of the most interesting teams across fantasy. I think Caleb Williams is going to be, again, I'm not a Caleb Williams fan either, but I do think he has the potential. Noted. I do think he has the potential to lead not one, not two, but maybe three really big fantasy performers in this offense. I mean, I think he himself has the potential and has the weapons to be a fantasy threat and he'd be a top 5 quarterback. And then on top of that, I do think Keenan Allen is one of your wide receivers to target in this offense because overall, I think DJ Moore is going to be the wide receiver 1. But because DJ Moore is so dominant and everyone's going to be looking at him, you don't forget what Keenan Allen just did last year. Don't forget what he's done over his entire career. Whenever he stayed healthy, he's put up 1,000-yard seasons easily. So he's going to be that wide receiver 2 that just floats under the radar, but somehow he's going to put up big numbers while everyone's looking at DJ Moore. The person who I think is going to be really hurt by this, though, is Rome Odunze.
You know, I think you just made me realize something about the Bears, and I think this is kind of how I'm drafting them. I feel like every Bears player to me is like an RB2 or a wide receiver 2. That's kind of how I'm looking at them. Like Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, they're wide receiver 2s. DeAndre Swift, I feel like he's a wide receiver 2, but I think you're right, and you hit the nail on the head. There is potential for a huge breakout.
I want to say too.
All these players can break out.
Yeah, that's why I said in the beginning it's one of the toughest teams to read. One thing I will say about the wide receiver room is I do expect Rome Odunze to have at least 2 or 3 games he pops off in. And the reason I say that is mostly because of Keenan Allen's injury history. I think most seasons he misses 2, maybe 3 games. So maybe not in a repeat draft league or a redraft league, but perhaps in a dynasty league, Rome Odunze might be a really good target, especially start him in those weeks that Keenan Allen inevitably, unfortunately, will sit out.
Yeah. No,
so
it'll be.
It's actually, it's amazing. Like, I have that same thought about Keenan Allen, but like, you'd be surprised. He's actually more durable than you expect. We just happen to seem to remember his early years, but. So the last 2 years, last year he missed a few games. He played 13 games. The year before that, he missed 10. But he had 4 straight seasons where he played every game. Or I'm sorry, he had 5 straight seasons where he played every game in 4 of them. Like, he's been fairly healthy outside of 3 years, and he's been in the league a long time.
Well, that's where I get worried. I think with him is
he's been
in the
league a long time.
That's why
the past 3 years are the years that he's missed. Right?
I mean,
correct me if I'm wrong.
2 out of the last 3. 2 out of the last 3 years, he's missed some games. Absolutely. But, like, I will also say he's no longer going to be targeted by the defenses as much because he's not the guy. So, DJ Moore is the guy.
So let me ask you this. Keenan Allen, are you think he's when you're drafting him, are you confident in that pick, or are you doing it with the expectation that he's going to pop? Like the risk level, what level of risk are you going in with this pick?
This all depends on where you draft him, right? And that's why he's a value target to me, because I think everyone's devaluing him because he's going to be the wide receiver too. Okay. I think you're going to be able to get Keenan Allen in the 5th round, and he's going to be that guy who you might be able to pop from the 5th round.
Oddly enough, it actually depends on how I draft my running backs in this situation, Tyler. I think that which means I'm drafting him in the later rounds if he's available. Yeah. I would be comfortable potentially taking him as my wide receiver too, as long as I definitely have my second running back picked already, and potentially my tight end. If I have 2 running backs, my starting wide receiver, and a tight end already, like Mike said, that adds up to a 5th round pick. Yeah. So that seems to be a spot that is a little bit of a reach, but if he falls, the rest of my team will carry it.
Okay, so Tyler, do you have anyone you're avoiding from this offense?
Avoiding, yes. Caleb Williams, I'm avoiding. I don't trust him. I'm on the hate train, and I just can't see him performing the way that everyone thinks he's going to perform. It's been so long since we've seen a dominant quarterback come right out of the draft. It was just last draft. The draft before that, I don't think we had anyone, but I think I'm avoiding definitely Caleb Williams. I think I'm agreeing with you, Rome Odunze. Keenan Allen, I think you're right. He's going to be
on Caleb Williams. Are we avoiding him altogether, or are we considering him as a backup quarterback in redraft leagues?
I would go backup quarterback in redraft leagues. I think you're exactly right. That's where I would
put
him.
It's not like he's like, I don't even want to deal with rookie quarterbacks. It's like, if I pick Jared Goff in the 7th, maybe I'll take Caleb Williams in the 15th.
Absolutely. Right. And when I know personally, when I speak about these people and I say I'm avoiding them, I'm not avoiding them entirely. I'm avoiding them for where they are going at ADP. Like, I'm just not going to touch Caleb Williams in the 8th round. I'm just not.
It's a very good point.
If you could pick him up in the 15th because no one else seemed to have gotten him, absolutely, he can blow up. He has the potential to be that QB 6 this year. Why wouldn't you take a chance?
Also, I rarely carry 3 quarterbacks on my team. I generally like to have like 5 wide receivers, 5 running backs, a defense kicker, 2 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, but that's a bad strategy.
This year, why? I've won plenty of leagues, thank you, and I've beat you plenty of times. So, but this year, because of how many... Yeah, you've beat me plenty of times, too. But how many injuries were there last year for starting quarterbacks? Is it the kind of year that maybe you want to draft 3 quarterbacks and, a second and third in those later rounds? And potentially Caleb Williams would come up on that list for me. If I'm drafting 3 quarterbacks, I want to find that risky guy who has high potential, and Caleb Williams kind of fits the bill.
See, I think I'm a little opposite. I always draft the quarterback that I want as my QB1, and then my QB2 is always that risky play. I don't think I've ever had 3 quarterbacks, but I do always, I will take a shot on a QB2 who I think could pop. I don't go for an average guy like Jameson Winston. I would. You're right. I would go for Caleb Williams because I do think it's a risky play.
As your quarterback too, okay.
So I do think that Caleb Williams. I mean, Caleb Williams, I wouldn't pick as a quarterback 3 because I just don't think you do quarterback 3s. I've done 3 quarterbacks in one league. It was a trial. It failed, and I'm not doing it again. I'll explain.
Even after last year's injury history at starting quarterbacks, like record-breaking.
That's exactly it. It was record-breaking. So I'm not going to count on another record-breaking season when you have all these other quarterbacks that you're going to be picking from off the waiver wire. Yeah. So, I mean, in the end, what you're going to end up doing is you pick up your one, because I'm typically talking about a regular standard league, not a super flex league where you're playing 2 quarterbacks. If there's a super flex league, absolutely you're taking 3. But I'm talking about a league where you're only playing 1 quarterback, so you're going to have your backup, and that's it.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll go back to this. Caleb Williams, though. Who are you taking? Caleb Williams or Jordan Love?
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love. Easily. Not even a conversation in my mind.
See, I could think about a lot of reasons why you'd choose Caleb Williams because of the history of the people that he has. He has two wide receivers that are better than the wide receiver 1 at the Green Bay Packers, and we're going to go into them right now because that's our next team. So, Green Bay Packers, big name staying. We already talked about Jordan Love. You guys basically seem to be saying, oh, hands down, you guys are going Jordan Love. To be honest, they're kind of the similar tier to me. But Jordan Love staying, Christian Watson staying, Jalen Reed staying, Romeo Doubs staying, and Luke Musgrave staying. Those are all your receivers that you're going to be getting. Now, big thing for them, they lost their running back from last year, and that was Aaron Jones, which I'm going to miss him, but I was tied to him for my Dynasty League for a number of years. But guess what? They did bring in Josh Jacobs. I'm a little bit of a hater on Josh Jacobs. I know we'll talk about that right now. I'll be honest. Josh Jacobs, to me, he's the avoid candidate in this offense. Tyler, tell me I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Yeah, I think you're wrong. I think Josh Jacobs had a down season last year on the Raiders, but I also didn't think the Raiders did very well and did very much to help him. The Packers, on the other hand, I think are a breakout team this season. I wouldn't be surprised if, we talked about the rankings earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions only have one game on the Packers. It's something. I think this team is that dominant, and I think, going back to quarterbacks, Jordan Love has shown last season where he was 5th overall as a QB or in the QB rankings. He is a big name. He's doing a lot, and I think this Packers team. I think we're going to see, the Packers like they were 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago, even with Aaron Rodgers. I think Josh Jacobs, I feel like, is going to be a big part of this offense.
So I actually think of everybody on this team, the person I would want to draft most and have on my fantasy team is Jordan Love. I actually completely, I got to disagree with you on this, Mike. I'm going to call you a fantasy fool.
Yeah, fool.
Because, okay.
This is where insert drop fools.
Fools. So, as I'm sure our one fan, Dan, will appreciate me standing up for the Packers here at Jordan Love. He was 5th last year in his first season starting. He had 3 years behind Rodgers. So getting to sit behind a great for 3 years and then starting, Caleb Williams is not even close to Jordan Love's tier in my mind. I don't think you will get anywhere near the fantasy or real football production out of Caleb Williams that you will Jordan Love. The other thing I'll say is Matt LaFleur, the head coach of the Packers, has come out and said, we drafted Jordan Love because he fit the offense I can run, or I want to run. This is now the year that he has learned enough and is comfortable enough, and we're going to fully run the offense I want to run. Last year was a test run, and he still performed.
I'll give you that. I mean, listen, he had some really great games, and he obviously did very well in fantasy. I don't know. For some reason, looking at him on the screen, there's just something about him to where I just want to say his efficiency was a little bit too high. And I know that's a little bit crazy to say, but I just think that they were it was a little bit too high, and it's going to come back to reality, and he's not going to be a repeat top 5 QB in fantasy. That's my thought, and I think Caleb Williams has the offense to do that. Because, where would you compare DJ Moore and Keenan Allen to Christian Watson and Jalen Reed? I would draft both of those guys in the Chicago Bears over both of the guys in the Packers.
I don't know if I would. Christian Watson had a weird injury, on and off injury this past year. Jalen Reed stepped up way bigger than I expected. Okay, yeah, I might draft both those guys just because they are proven vets over them. But again, I think there's teams out there that I draft the quarterback, but I don't want the wide receivers in fantasy.
And I'm going to bring it home with that exact same thing. I agree with all of what you said. I think that and Mike, I know you'll disagree with this, but I think the 2 guys that I'm targeting on this Packers team, even though I still think the Packers are going to be in a turnaround, they're going to kill it this coming season. The only 2 guys I'm really looking at are Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs. The wide receivers, I would put them in the W2 or wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 category. And even Luke Musgraves, I mean, sure, get him, but again, it goes back to the tight end. But Mike, I know you're saying probably not.
I just know for me, I'm just looking at this offense so differently than you guys are, because I just look at Josh Jacobs last year. Yes, I am 100% on board that he was on a worse team with a worse offensive line, but his efficiency and his looks just didn't look good. The only reason he was that number one running back that year, 2 seasons ago, was because he had pure volume, and he's not going to get that again this season. And his efficiency drastically fell last season. So I just think watching the Raiders let him go, that's saying something. On the other hand, Christian Watson, I think he's super explosive. I think if he can stay healthy, which he has yet to prove that he can do, he's great, but he can't stay healthy. And Dobbs and Reed looked great. He did, but I would still choose other offensive weapons over him, which is, I guess, why I keep going back to Caleb Williams being the possibility of exploding. But Jordan, you want to talk?
No, the last one, I agree that the hardest part of the Packers to read is going to be the wide receiver room. Yep. I do think that Romeo Dobbs could be a sleeper at the value pick you can get him at. Jalen Reed and Watson, I don't know who's going to put up more fantasy points this season. Now, the interesting point about Josh Jacobs, it kind of feels a little bit like the Saquon situation. Like, Mike, you talked about Raiders let him go. What does that say? Giants didn't pay Saquon the $38 million he wanted, and he went to this is gonna kill me to say it. He went to a better team with a better offensive line. Oh, that hurt.
They lost Kelsey. It's okay.
But you understand my point. It's almost like a proven vet is stepping into a better organization, a better winning team, and a better offensive line. I kind of feel like this might be a year for vet running backs like Josh Jacobs and Saquon.
Yeah, and one of my worries, and then we'll move on. One of my worries is that the ball is going to be spread around so much between these three wide receivers on the Packers team. So Jordan Love's value is going to go sky high, but the wide receivers, I feel like it's going to be an even split as we've seen in the past. Or you're going to have one guy who every 10th or every 5th game explodes, gets 4 touchdowns, 40 points, and you win that week.
Who will be consistent, Tyler?
Right. That's where
Jordan Love.
Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of the thing that I kind of bring it all home. But anyway, enough about the Packers. We're moving on now to the Minnesota Vikings. Another interesting team. This you're right. This whole division is this is a powerhouse division, and right. This is huge for fantasy. Big guy is staying. You got Justin Jefferson, Ty Chandler, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. You do have Kirk Cousins leaving, but you did add JJ McCarthy and Aaron Jones, who, with Ty Chandler as your running back, I think Aaron Jones is obviously going to be the RB1. What are your thoughts, Jordan, on how this team's going to – I know you've got big expectations for this team, and I think we've talked about the rookies, and I know you're pretty big into this.
Well, it's going to be really interesting. I don't know what to expect from Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones had a really great final few games with the Packers, that leading up to the playoffs. If he can continue that, that's going to be awesome. And Justin Jefferson, for me, is kind of entering the best player I can compare him to would probably be Devontae Adams, in this way that regardless of the quarterback, you expect Devontae to perform. If you get him the ball on a slant, he'll get you yards. He'll maybe get a touchdown. I kind of feel like Justin Jefferson's entering that conversation, which kind of means, to me, I'm not terribly worried that it's JJ McCarthy and a rookie playing quarterback. I still expect a top 5 performance with JJ.
Mike, you want this follow-up, or you want me to take it?
I'll take the follow-up. I mean,
I think we're both on the same page
Jordan,
here.
I think you're 100% right. I mean, I think you're almost devaluing Justin Jefferson's talent, man. Obviously he's gonna be top 5. It doesn't even matter that it's the new rookie quarterback. You're right.
Okay.
And there's people who have gone through. Will you get that dog to stop? No, there's people who are gonna say I don't know. Agreed, right? I think there's so many people who are going to say, it's a rookie quarterback. You can't possibly do that. No. Justin Jefferson has proven that he is an elite talent. He is an elite wide receiver.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning. Yeah.
Absolutely. So he will get his targets.
Don't go wrong. If JJ McCarthy just sucks, out of nowhere, and it's just problems. Dude, if JJ McCarthy is like Josh Rosen, that guy who was drafted by the Cardinals before Kyler Murray at pick 8 and just shit the bed.
Yeah, the guy who said he was going to be the best quarterback in that draft class.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, who came out and was like 7 people went earlier than they should have. Like, yeah, he was trash.
So credit to him though for having that confidence. I will give him that.
Yeah, credit to him. Credit to him. Now,
just prove it.
My obvious, like everyone knows it. If JJ's on the board, freaking take him. Like once pick 5 happens, if he's on the board, take him wherever you are.
I do want to say though, I thought I agreed with you, Mike, and we were on the same page, but I don't think we were. Jordan, I did disagree with your point about even if you have a skilled player, you still need a quarterback who can throw the ball. And I know you're saying pick him up no matter what because he's going to get points. And you brought up Devontae Adams. But look at the last couple seasons on the Raiders. Devontae Adams has not been where you drafted in the position you have. So
that's true. His ADP has been overvalued.
Right.
But he's still top 10.
But look at Garrett Wilson. There's a lot of like superstar wide receivers out there who don't have that quarterback behind them, and I think that that affects them. And I think this is going to be the same case with Justin Jefferson. I don't think I'd pick him top 5 because of the unknown with JJ McCarthy.
Real question here: do you take DJ Moore? You think DJ Moore or Justin Jefferson's going to end with
Justin
more fantasy?
Jefferson.
There's examples going the other way as well. I mean, here, what about what DeAndre Hopkins did with Kyler Murray? I mean, we all basically say that Kyler Murray is like an overvalued quarterback too because he's a running guy, right? But DeAndre Hopkins was still a top 3 guy. I mean, talent.
So, Tyler, would you say that Justin Jefferson, you're not comfortable just like taking him for him? You're like, for me, Devontae was probably not this year, but like past few years, he's been in that conversation. Mike brought up a great player, DeAndre Hopkins. Like, there's certain wide receivers that it almost feels like it doesn't matter who the quarterback is if they can just boop over the offensive line, get into them. Like Tyreek Hill. Let's be honest. Is Tua good, or does he have the best wide receiver in the game?
But and that's where I think you got to realize I don't think JJ McCarthy is. I think he's worse than Tua. I think he's worse than a lot of these quarterbacks, and we don't know. This is what I think. I would draft Justin Jefferson. Don't get me wrong, 100%. But there's guys I would put ahead of him: Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase. I'd put Amon-Ra St. Brown ahead of him because I know what I'm going to get. Justin Jefferson, you don't know what you're going to get. I would even possibly even think to pick AJ Brown or Puka Nacua over him just because of the volume and because of the known versus unknown that you're getting.
Now, my question to you. Oh, Mike, go.
No, I get what you're saying. Like, listen, there's definitely going to be a possibility that you draft those guys before him, and there's a possibility that Justin Jefferson falls to that 7 or 8 spot, like you were just saying. But that's 7 or 8. You're not having him drop to 15.
Right, 100%. I'm just talking, from a draft perspective. If you've got the 3rd pick and you're looking at a number 1 wide receiver to pick for you, those are guys I would honestly, if it were me, I would probably see him fall the later of the first draft. That's where I'm valuing him later on, like a 7, 8, 9, maybe even later than that, and maybe even boiling over into the 2nd round. If I don't think he will, I'm not saying he will. I'm just saying if he does, that's when I would pick him.
Okay, I agree with you because I actually do think he's going to fall to the 2nd round,
right?
Or be the back end of the 1st, but like. Again, he's going to be like wide receiver 6, 7, 8. That's where I see him being.
100%.
It's true. I think, Tyler, I'm going to lean towards your train of thought here in terms of the fact that if I'm in a 12-man league and I have picks 1 through 6, I'm not picking Justin Jefferson.
Right.
And like you bring up better options, And at the end of the day, I agree with you. I think he will still be top 10, but he won't break 6. Because we just don't know of his quarterback situation. And J.J. McCarthy is not a step in and be a pro. He's a step in and go through growing pains, and let's see how he pans out.
Right.
Okay, guys.
And that's what I see him.
I agree with that actually entirely. And that's maybe my miscommunication. But I'll say this. Where the whole J.J. McCarthy thing does step in, it destroys, in my opinion, Jordan Addison.
100%. We're talking that we think Justin Jefferson's going to get the volume because that's all that J.J. McCarthy's going to be able to produce. That's leaving Jordan Addison with nothing. And I think his value drops. Last season, I think we looked at him like, hey, this is a great wide receiver 2 option. This season, I would say he's a bench guy, wide receiver 3. I don't even know if I trust him for flex.
For me personally, when it comes to the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy, I think out of those 6 quarterbacks that were taken in the first round, he's kind of the biggest question mark to me. But he also has the highest potential. He's coming from a national championship team. He's coming from a team where he also didn't throw that lot. They were a running team, but at the same time, you're going to fault him for doing what it takes to win and going with the best strategy. Like, he was the person who led the team to winning. So does that mean he's going to find and work with the team to get smart ways to the ball to guys like Justin Jefferson, and it'll work out great? We just don't know how that'll translate. Or was it Jim Harbaugh, who was a great coach?
You know what?
We'll find out.
I see this guy. I see J.J. McCarthy kind of reminding me of like the Drew Lock, Sam Darnold, that draft class. What the caliber of quarterbacks they produced are. That's what I'm
fired.
Yeah, that's how I'm viewing J.J. McCarthy. I really honestly think he's going to be like a Sam Darnold or a Drew Lock, where they have moments where they shine, but at the end of the day, they're not a fantasy. They don't help you from a fantasy perspective.
I agree with that, and I think that what I brought up about him winning but being on a running team kind of fits that mold. J.J. McCarthy might go on and have a very good career, and he might just be the kind of quarterback that, listen, I lead the team to do what we need to win, not be the guy who puts the team on my shoulders and wins. So
right.
We'll see.
I hate that I'm going to do this because I'm going to name drop somebody because of a playing style and not because of the talent. I'm going to preface that right now. But I actually disagree with you because I think he's going to be similar playing style, not quality, to Tom Brady. And I
knew you were going to say that.
I do, because
where did Tom Brady go to college?
Michigan.
There you go. So I got to say that because I think he's going to be that guy who owns the short yardage. Every other guy that you just said, like Sam Darnold, you're talking about these guys who busted, right? They busted because they were supposed to show immense talent and they could throw the ball deep, which J.J. McCarthy did not show at Michigan because that's just not his game. He's a smart player who's going to make the passes that he needs to in short yardage, and he has guys to do that. He's thrown to Justin Jefferson, who can catch anything. He's got T.J. Hawkinson as his second target, and Jordan Addison, who is in no way, shape, or form not talented. He's just not going to be thrown that much. On top of the fact that they did get Aaron Jones. They have immense pass catchers at the short yardage game.
So, Mike, you bring up a great point here. I was actually thinking of Tom Brady, as I said, my point about he does what he needs to win, not putting if he needs to step up and pass, he'll pass. If he needs to give it to the running game, he'll give it to the running game. He just wants to win. And I know I haven't said it on this podcast, but I've said it to you guys separately. Number one job of any quarterback is to win. Not to throw a bunch of yards, not to throw touchdowns, not to run touchdowns. It's to win. Lead the team to a victory. So maybe he'll be that guy. But, Tyler, let me ask you this. How does J.J. McCarthy being the quarterback, we talked about Jordan Addison, how does he affect T.J. Hawkinson's value, who was like top 3 last year when he was healthy?
I think again, and if he's going to throw those short passes, I think T.J. Hawkinson's value is going to stay where he is, probably that 4 or 5. It's another team in this division that's reliant on a brand new rookie quarterback who no one knows what they're going to get. And maybe that would put a little hesitation in my mind of taking Hawkinson over George Kittle or taking Hawkinson over Mark Andrews. I think that does affect my decision. And, when I run in that situation in the draft, it'll be interesting to see, hey, what am I going to decide? Am I going to go Hawkinson and take the chance, or am I going to go with a guy like Mark Andrews or George Kittle, who I have a better understanding of what's going to come out of it?
It is a tough situation.
Yep.
Now,
what are you going to say, Jordan? Ask us your question.
I was going to ask, who out of this entire division, who do you think's your number one receiver? Like, which receiver out of this division do you want on your fantasy team the most?
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no way I can avoid Amon-Ra St. Brown on this one.
Is it entirely because of quarterback situations?
Yes.
I would agree.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and no, only because it's not just quarterback situations, but it's also sidebar. Jared Goff is another good comp to a J.J. McCarthy, in my opinion. But I think it's also because of the fourth down scenario. It's the Detroit Lions method of they go for it. It's going to be that many more attempts. It's going to be that many more passes, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is the major beneficiary of that.
I think Amon-Ra St. Brown would be my vote here, too. I would be more likely to bet he ends up top 5 than Justin Jefferson top 5.
I agree.
Now, Tyler, what do you think about running backs? Who's your number 1 running back?
Again, I think
it's the toughest one, I think, for this division.
I don't think it is. I think
Agreed.
it's Jahmyr Gibbs.
You don't think Josh Jacobs? Oh, personally, I just thought like Aaron Jones has proven himself. Josh Jacobs has proven himself. Out of all the positions in fantasy for this division, I feel like running back's going to be the closest.
I think it's Gibbs, and I don't think it's going to be close.
I
do think it's Gibbs, too.
I think all of us are going to think every single position, the best player is going to be on the Lions.
Yeah.
Man, well, all 4 running backs I think are going to be solid this season from this division, which is interesting. Very running back heavy
Who's the
division.
worst? Who's the worst? That's a more close question.
DeAndre Swift.
It kills me actually.
It kills me too.
Because who are you thinking, Jordan?
Aaron Jones.
Really? I was actually thinking Swift. I was thinking DeAndre Swift.
See, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, we all agree Gibbs is the best, and all 3 of us differ on who's going to be the worst. Now, tight end. Who are you guys taking?
Laporta.
Okay, so I actually
easy.
think I'm going to disagree with you on this one.
Why?
Ooh.
Now,
hot take.
At the end of the day, this goes back to the beginning of the conversation, or beginning of the episode that Mike and I brought up, that his ADP is very important, the pick you give him. Will Sam Laporta outscore TJ Hawkinson in fantasy? Yes. But the place that you're going to be able to take Hawkinson versus the place you're going to be able to take Laporta will outvalue Laporta's pick.
Whoa. The question was who's the best one?
Yeah, that's
We're
a
not
different
talking.
question.
Yeah, this ain't talking.
That's why I say,
no.
okay. Laporta, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Laporta's going to
rules.
have the highest fantasy score. I do think if Hawkinson slips, he's a bit of a sleeper, and he's got a lot of value, though. That's just my point there.
He will definitely slip because I do think this is important to note on this podcast. TJ Hawkinson, let's not forget, he had that horrible knee injury, right?
Yeah.
They still just said about a month ago they don't know when he's going to return. So
yes,
you're looking at probably not having him for a little bit in the season.
Last question for you guys, and I think this is the most interesting for the division. Of the wide receivers, 2. Jordan Addison, we'll assume Jalen Reed and Christian Watson's number 1. Keenan Allen for the Bears, and Jamison Williams for the Lions. Out of those 4 wide receiver 2s, who do you think brings the most fantasy points?
Oh, I like the question. Can you say them? Can you say them one more time? Because I'm not sure who you said.
I think it's the toughest one so far. Jamison Williams as wide receiver 2 for the Lions.
Definitely
Keenan Allen, wide receiver 2 for Bears. I'm assuming Jalen Reed, wide receiver 2 for the Packers, because that's a tough wide receiver room to read. And Jordan Addison from the Vikings.
Can I answer this in 2 parts? Can I answer this in 2 parts?
No, 1 part.
Tyler says Keenan Allen. Mike,
this is not a 2-part movie. This is 1 part. This ain't Star Wars.
I think this is the toughest question I've asked so far for the division.
Without a doubt, it's the toughest question you asked so far. But, I mean, they're all still pretty easy. I do agree with Tyler. The best will most likely be Keenan Allen. But I think Christian Watson is going to be your best value pick going off of your thought.
I think
that. Christian Watson's going to end up dropping, and he could go nuclear.
I could see that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Christian Watson could become like who's wide receiver 1 truly in the Packers room. We don't know.
That's the thing. We don't know. It's very clear.
It could be Christian Watson.
The other 2.
Yep.
Now, but you're right. I'm going with Tyler. I think that this division we talked about in the beginning is the most competitive, one of the most competitive divisions in the league. To me, that means that all the teams have good depth. And the wide receiver 2s in this division, it seems like a lot of other teams would be more than happy to have those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Keenan Allen, he's awesome. So, all right, I guess we've been booted. We're done.
Segue. I had to end it in a fun way that you guys were just like, what? I had to end it like our first take. Have a great night, fools. Thanks for listening. Give us a follow and a like. I'll see you next week. Bye.